So recently I transformed our garage. This area used to be just a blank open wall that was not pretty to look at and didn't really have anything on there, just things thrown up against the wall. And now it is a totally usable space with tons and tons of storage both on top and on bottom, as well as a workbench that I will be using for glue ups in the winter, since the shop just gets too cold and the glue won't dry overnight. Let me walk you through the steps I took. To get everything started off right, I decided to clean up the garage and just get everything prepped to put on a fresh coat of paint. So I start off just by taping everything up just to make sure that I'm not painting anything that I don't want painted. And I didn't go all the way up to the ceiling just because the cabinets will be there and it seemed pointless to me to paint more than I needed to. So I'm just using an inexpensive multi-tool to get in there and cut that notch out. And I just slide it on in and you can see it fits perfect now. I'll just need to do a little touch-up paint. So you can see the blue tape on the wall. I went along first and found all of the studs in the wall and then lined up the cabinets and screwed them into place. It was a little harder than it looks here just because my wall is a little bit curved. Everything went into place really well. Nice that the cabinets lined up on this side of the wall. The cabinets and the countertops were here in the place when we bought it, and they are from IKEA. The countertops are butcher block, and they had some leftover caulking from the last time that they were put on, so I just turned them over and sanded off the caulking and then just gave them a nice sanding on all surfaces just to give them a slight refinish. I didn't do a very thorough job just because these are going to be in the garage and I will be using them for doing glue ups and other things, so they don't have to be perfect out here. Then I grabbed some caulking and I just put it around all of the edges so that it would seal on that butcher block top and hold it in place. I also just wanted to make sure there wasn't any seams or any gaps, trying to keep out any pests or rodents that potentially might get in the garage from getting into our cabinets. Next, it was time to put on the trim. I ended up grabbing my compressor and just nailing the boards into place. I did some butcher block oil along the top just to protect it and bring out the real natural color in the wood. All right, and now with these installed, it was time to move to the upper cabinets. I ended up purchasing some inexpensive cabinets from Home Depot. They were already put together for me, and I don't think honestly that I could have bought the wood for much cheaper than I paid for these. Now you will see there were some imperfections in these cabinets. They do have particle board in them, so there were a few areas where there were cracks and some dings out of them. But luckily I was able to just position them in such a way that it didn't show and it didn't become a problem. There were also some issues with the doors lining up. They just weren't exact. As you can see, there's kind of a gap here in the top of this one, and this one side of the cabinet door sits down a little further than the other. I removed all of the doors so that I could paint the frames and the doors individually and get them coated really nicely. The issue that I faced here is that I did not mark which door went to which cabinet and on which side. So you'll see that this becomes an issue for me in the end. It would be really hard to mark every one of them since you're painting the doors, but I would recommend making sure that you know exactly which door goes where. And then I went around each one of them and gave them just a light sanding just to make sure that all the rough edges were off. The roller worked really well and was a really smooth coat, but you will need that brush just to get in the edges that the roller won't be able to reach. I brought the cabinets over and then started marking on the wall as well as inside the cabinets so I knew where the studs were. Then I brought out the heavy lifter so I could hang each of these cabinets up. Just installing screws in the back, attaching it into the studs on the wall. I put in the adjustable shelves and they're ready to be used. Now on to the door fronts. I removed all of the hardware so that I could paint them both front and back. This took quite a while, but again, it was well worth it just to get a nice even coat on all of them without trying to work around hardware or potentially painting it. I did a light sanding coat on all the doors, again, just to make sure that I'm not missing any rough edges or leaving anything that's going to make the paint look blotchy or raised in certain areas. I did the same process here and used a paintbrush to get the corners and the edges that were hard to get to. Then I used a roller on everywhere else that I could just so that it would look smooth. And here's a little more detailed look at what I did for every door. Just painting in those corners as well as the inner frame just to make sure that the paint's getting everywhere. Then I'm following up with the paint roller just to smooth everything out. I ended up going with black for our garage because the lower cabinets were already black and because they're going to get dirty out there and I don't want to be cleaning them all the time. You could also go with a stain on these and it would look really nice. Once the doors were dry, it was time to put on the hardware and hang them. Here is where I should have marked exactly which door went to which spot, because as I hung them up, you can probably see they did not hang right. They were overlapping in some areas and they were uneven. There were some big gaps in there. The doors hung lower on one side than the other, and I had a lot of issues with this. So if I buy more cabinets from them, I will make sure to keep the cabinets in the right spot. And here I am, you can see going through. At first I tried to adjust the hinges, hoping that I would be able to make them fit correctly. Then I ended up taking the doors off and putting them in different spots just to try and get them to fit the way they should. I will definitely make sure to mark my doors better next time, so I don't spend so much time moving doors around. All right, so let me show you what I'm talking about here about how they don't line up quite right. As you can see right here, this door comes down just a little lower than the other one. And this one has the same issue. One door is just a little bit lower. They also have just a little bit of a gap in here. So I did open them up and make adjustments in here as much as I could. And that did get them lined up close enough that they're not overlapping each other. I also spent over an hour moving the doors to different spots and different sides to try to get them as good as I could. But this was as well as I could do in an hour's worth of time, and that was all I was willing to give. Overall, I am very happy with these cabinets and would recommend them. I did have some issues with the doors, but that was user error, not their fault. These are good value for your money. I really hope this video was helpful. Please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on my future builds. Normally, the cat attacks the dog, so she must feel pretty brave as a spider.